Hello everybody and welcome to this short presentation on business recovery planning. This was recorded whilst we were still in the COVID-19 lockdown period and is really focused on helping business owners think about the key aspects they should be considering as we start to plan to come out of the lockdown period. Perhaps looking at different ways of working, perhaps looking at the different markets that we're now going to be operating in. By way of introduction, my name is Phil Sayers. I'm the founder of Proten Sales Development. I'm a career salesman, sales director and CEO. I've worked for, worked with and run small businesses for far too many years, more than I care to remember. And nowadays I work with small business owners in two aspects. Firstly, to help them improve the way they sell their products and services, but also help them in a more general business coaching aspect where I will challenge their thinking, help them come to more effective plans, put action plans in place, and then also hold them accountable for doing the things they say they're going to do. I'm also a published author, so my book, It's All About the Value, provides a really sort of simple introduction to a structured approach to selling, particularly for business owners and business people who perhaps don't have a formal background in selling. Now, we're operating in a completely different environment to anything I guess any of us have imagined before. So I wanted to sort of suggest a thought of the day, which is this lovely African proverb that smooth seas don't make skillful sailors. And certainly it can be a little bit overwhelming looking at the situations that we're facing right now. But I'd also like to suggest that actually if you work out how to operate in these really uncertain times, the shape you're going to be in as we start to come out the other side is going to be far, far better and far more effective. We've got a number of things we're going to cover in this session. We're going to look at how you can close the disconnect, and this is the disconnect between you, your team, and your sort of wider network of contacts. We'll look at the need to reinvent ourselves potentially. We'll look at our budget, both personal and business. We'll look at opportunities, vulnerabilities, and critical challenges that perhaps we need to be aware of and address. We'll look at identifying and managing the risks that are facing us. We'll look at how to put in place goals and action plans, and then we'll look at pulling everything together as a complete package. And then finally, we'll look at what your next steps potentially should be, and then a little bit of an overview of how we might potentially be able to help you. So before I get started, I just wanted to share some thoughts about how we can stay better connected at this time. Now, I'm not talking about how we can be better connected with technology, with things like these webinars or our online meetings, though these are, of course, important. I'm coming from the perspective of how we can work together more effectively now and in the future, where your expertise can be combined with ours to create outcomes that wouldn't be possible by working alone. Now, my view has never been more important to create and connect with a team of people who can help you at this time. So people like perhaps your banker, your legal and HR advisors, your accountant or bookkeeper, so that together you can come up with a far better plan. At Proten Sales Development, our core purpose is helping you to build a better business. And that's why I'm running this session. So this should just be the beginning of how we can work even better together. So please take lots of notes. Don't be shy about getting in contact afterwards and asking questions, and let's get into the content. So during times of adversity, we're often forced to think outside the box, to reinvent the way we work or behave. And really, I can see four main opportunities for you to potentially reinvent your business. And the first one of these is to innovate. And the Oxford Dictionary defines innovation as the introduction of new things, ideas, or ways of doing something. So a great example I've seen of this during the COVID-19 pandemic is a company that switched from selling travel pillows to selling hair clippers. No relation at all between the two products, but they've been able to completely transform their business into selling something that is suddenly in high demand. Now, in this sense, innovation is doing something completely different to what was there before. So an example for you might be introducing a brand new product line or service. The second way to reinvent ourselves is to re-engineer. And again, the dictionary definition of this is to change and improve the design of a product or system. So in other words, use what you've already got to produce something completely different. So one really good example of re-engineering is the UK gin companies who've been looking at what their plant can make and moving from producing gin to creating their own hand sanitizer. Another really good example is the 7 Formula One teams who took up the NHS challenge in the UK to make ventilators. The third way to reinvent your business is to adapt or change the way you deliver products or services. Now, if you remember the biological definition of adaptation, which is the process by which a species becomes fitted to its environment. In other words, if we take the new normal or new environment that we're going to find ourselves in, how can we change to suit that environment better? So a great example of this is one I saw recently. It's in a local beauty therapy business. And the owner emailed the client base offering a free online skin consultation if they buy a product, as well as new bundles of products, so things like full-size products and multiple samples. And they marketed this as the home facial. Now, that business was unable to offer beauty therapy in the traditional way during the lockdown period, so they needed to adapt to an online solution. So we know we can reinvent in 4 ways. So innovation, re-engineering, adaptation, and now number 4, which is to widen your lane. And what we mean by widening your lane is to broaden your product or service offering. For example, the cafe who broadens their offering from purely cabinet food and coffee to include new ready-made meals, boxed sweet treats, or to selling wholesale ingredients and even ingredient bundles with recipes for making their signature treats. So with these 4 ideas in mind, innovation, re-engineering, adaptation, or broadening your offering, what can you do in your business to adapt to what we're now seeing? And this is what business recovery planning is all about. Now, there's a natural order in which to reinvent your business. Now, with business continuity planning, this is a previous webinar I'd run, we asked you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Business recovery planning is no different. Remember that your business is there to serve you, not the other way around, and you should not be a slave to your business. So step 1 is to put your shareholder or owner hat on and define what you need to get from your business. Can you make savings in your personal spending to reduce the cash flow strain on the business? No doubt you've made savings during lockdown. Can you continue with these savings? Updating your personal budget is best done using a template so that you don't miss any expenses. And a really easy way to do this is to simply look at your bank statements online and see what you typically spend in a month. But of course, you need to be realistic too, as the lockdown period has been very different as spending opportunities were limited for us. So make sure you go back 3 or 4 months to review your expenses. Now, once you've done your personal budget, you can then build up your revised business budget. And the purpose here is to say, well, okay, I know what my personal budget is. What does my business need to deliver to me in order for me to work within my personal financial requirements? Now, many of you may have already done a business budget for the year. In all likelihood, this is going to change quite dramatically now. And ordinarily with a business budget, you'd start at the top. You'd look at what do we think we're going to make in terms of sales revenue over the next 12 months. What I'm recommending here is you actually start with a bottom-up process. So you start with the increase in cash you need to achieve for the year. And it's really important to start here, as many businesses have found that they didn't have a sufficient war chest of cash going into the lockdown. Now, this isn't designed to be sort of technical accountantese here. We just want to show you how you can take control back by going through a high-level step-by-step process. So if we start at the bottom as what's the increase or decrease in cash that we need from our business, we then look at what are the other cash movements. So you might be able to free up cash by reducing debtors, reducing stock or work in progress levels, or perhaps by negotiating better terms with suppliers. If you've got loans, then you need to obviously allow for those principal repayments on existing and any new finance that you might have taken out. Are there any assets that perhaps you no longer need, or perhaps new ones that you do need to acquire to operate in a different way? We'd look at obviously what drawings you need to take out of the business. Now, depending on whether or not you're self-employed or operating as a director of a limited company, will determine where your earnings, your drawings will sit in this list. but we still clearly need to take that into account. And then obviously after adding or subtracting these items, we'll look at what's the target profit after tax that you need to generate. Then we add back in what the tax is that you would be paying, which will then give you your profit before tax figure. Then you have a careful look at your overheads to see if you can make any savings there, and that will give you your gross profit that's needed. And using your desired gross profit percentage, you can then derive the sales figures that you require to give you what you need from the business. And then it's all about reviewing these numbers and margins to ensure that you can come up with a workable revised budget. Ideally, from here, you'll then complete a more detailed forecast on a month-by-month basis, so that you then have a basis from which to track your progress. Of course, this may look a little bit overwhelming, so if you do need help going through this process, it's relatively straightforward if you're used to it, and we can certainly help if you'd like. And this, of course, is where having real-time digital reports of your numbers is so important. For example, if you identified your sales total for the year needed to be, say, £500,000, that equates to, say, £10,500 a week if your business is open 48 weeks a year. Now, you'll want to have a system for recording how you're going against that target. Likewise, if you have debtor terms of 7 days and your debtors are currently taking, say, 41 days to pay you on average, you'll want to measure if that number is improving. We normally recommend that you measure no more than 5 of your most important numbers. We call these key performance indicators, or KPIs. Many of you may already have KPIs in place. Some examples of these are daily or weekly sales, gross profit by product or service, debtor days, or increase or decrease in cash for the month. Once you have the KPIs and the budget, it's important to have these numbers loaded into your monthly reporting system so you can track your actual results to your budget. You don't necessarily need lots of additional technology to do this. In fact, in my business, a lot of the KPIs I track I do on a simple Excel spreadsheet. Once you know at a high level what your budget is, it's time to look at the opportunities that exist to achieve that budget. Again, we recommend focusing on no more than 5 key opportunities. So think of the ideas we talked about earlier to reinvent your business. Opportunities could also be things like working in more of an online way with your team or your customers. You may no longer need the same premises, or you may need to redefine the roles in your business. And there may be new lines of revenue to pursue or other businesses to acquire. Other opportunities might be around the adoption of technology or systems to improve your efficiency or online communication. Taking the time to brainstorm all of these opportunities to improve your business is a really valuable and empowering exercise. You need to leave no stone unturned here. So come up with as many ideas as you can think of, and then hone that list down to the 5 that you're really going to focus attention on. Of course, the flip side of opportunity are your vulnerabilities. So what are the 5 biggest vulnerabilities in your business right now? They could be things like poor cash flow, a sustained downturn in demand for current products or services, poor debtor management, or banking covenants not being met. Naming these vulnerabilities enables you to make a plan to overcome them. So name so you can tame is a great mindset to have. You need to be brutally honest in your assessment of your vulnerabilities. A rosy plan for your financiers, your bank, is not going to pass muster in these difficult times, so be brutally honest with yourself. Once you've identified your 5 biggest opportunities and 5 key vulnerabilities, you then need to identify your 2 to 3 most critical challenges. These might be things like deciding whether or not to sell or liquidate part of the business, or establishing an online sales platform, or securing sufficient finance to trade through the next 3 to 6 months. Now, we strongly recommend that you do a careful analysis of all risks in your business. The best way to do this is to complete a risk register which assesses the likelihood of each risk and then the consequences for your business if that risk is not mitigated. And these risks fall into 10 broad categories. The first of these is governance. So these would include things like poor planning, lack of up-to-date policy, or poor discipline around working on the business. Second area of risk is leadership. So risks around communication or reporting or team morale. Products or services, are there risks around the lack of adaptation or innovation? Are there operational risks around suppliers and supply chain, contracts and key customers? Perhaps you have risks including poor return on marketing investment, or overspending, or a lack of digital presence. Perhaps you have risks around the need to adapt to e-commerce or online selling, risks around poor training, or even, dare I say, overselling in these challenging times. Perhaps there are financial risks, so things like undercapitalization, lack of sufficient cash flow, poor financing structure, or poor credit control, or even poor reporting or lack of forecasting. Number 8 is the risks around HR, so perhaps there are overspending risks, or poorly managed restructuring, or perhaps grievances for employees who don't like the changes that you're implementing within the business. Number 9 is all around admin, and perhaps there are risks about lack of automation, so you're not making the most of efficiencies you could operate. And the final one, perhaps there are technology risks about poor adaptation of software or apps that you use within the business. Once you've identified the risks, you need to pull everything together into a cohesive plan with goals, actions, and responsibilities. Your business recovery plan is much more detailed than your business plan, in that you get right down into the detail for each department of the business, however small your business may be. And these goals need to be SMART, and all actions need to be assigned to someone who's responsible for delivering them. And these goals and actions should then be updated regularly through some form of regular review process, whether you do that internally or whether you work with a third party to help you review them. And at this time, I would always recommend a monthly review for at least 6 months, and then a change to quarterly after that. So let's take a closer look at how to pull all of this together now as a complete package. So depending on your circumstances, your complete package should include, firstly, your personal budget, secondly, your risk register, thirdly, your business recovery plan, fourthly, your business forecast, fifthly, an updated organizational chart if you have a team of people and if applying for finance, and then sixthly and finally, a finance application if that's what's needed. Now, you may not need to do all of this work at the same time. For example, you may have sufficient cash flow now, so you don't need to apply for finance. Likewise, if you don't have a team, you may not need an updated organizational chart. But what is important is that you establish what is right for you, what combination of these you need, and who's going to do them. So let's have a look at what a business recovery plan might look like. So with any of these plans, typically you're going to start with an executive summary, which gives you a little overview as to where the business is, how it's got to where it is, what are some of the issues that it may be facing. And we're then going to start quite logically with the personal budget. So we're looking at what's important for the business owners. What cash do they need to be able to get out of the business, both on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, and then looking at whether or not any additional finance is required to help fund that. Then we'd then break that down and start looking at the budget for the business itself, using that bottom-up process. So looking at what, in this case, what's the net profit before tax we need to generate? What does that represent in terms of gross profit, gross revenue? And then, of course, we'd split that out into 12 months, the 4 quarters of the following year. The next thing is then to look at our budget and our break-even analysis, and looking at what's the increase or decrease in cash that this plan is going to deliver. And this is where we start to take into account our drawings, our personal drawings, whether or not we're selling or buying new assets, what the tax implications and liabilities are going to be. And again, we split that out into the 4 quarters. Then we'd identify what are those 5 critical KPIs that we need to focus on, that we need to be monitoring each week of the month. Then looking at what are the 5 key opportunities that we've identified that we're going to focus our attention on. Similarly, what are the 5 biggest vulnerabilities that we need to be aware of, that we need to focus our attention on? And then what are those 2 or 3 critical challenges that we need to address right now? And then we actually start breaking this down into each of what you might think of as the departments within your organization. And for each of these departments, these areas of responsibility, we'd look at, okay, what are the risks, and what are the strategies we're going to use to mitigate those risks? And then for each of those, what are our goals for the next 12 months? What do we want to achieve by the end of the next 12-month period? And then for each of those goals, what do we need to accomplish over the next 90 days that's going to keep us on track? And then finally, within each of those 90-day goals, what are the specific actions that either we as business owners, our team if we have one, or our independent advisors are going to complete with completion deadline dates in order to keep everything on track. Now, you may not have all of these departments within your business, so you'd obviously pick and choose the ones that are relevant to you, but going through this detailed level of thinking will give you much greater clarity of thought, will help you focus your attention on the things that you need to do in the short term to keep your business on track and being able to regenerate itself and rebuild itself effectively. Now, I'm hoping at this stage I haven't completely overwhelmed you with too much technical detail. My goal really has been to try and share with you what business recovery planning is all about and how to do it. And of course, there are different ways that you could approach this. We've been looking at a fairly comprehensive plan. There are certainly slightly simpler approaches you could take, and it's really a question of deciding what's best for you and your business. So what are your next steps from here? Well, I would argue that doing nothing is just not an option. We're entering into a period of business as not normal. It's not business as usual. So doing what you've always done is unlikely to give you the same results as you've had in the past. So please remember to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. The more sustainable you can make your business right now, the better for everyone. Then make a plan to get through these challenging times and focus on what you can do as opposed to worrying about what might happen in the future. And finally, remember, we're here for you if you want help, and we're certainly happy to help if we can. Now, our recommended strategy is obviously to complete a business recovery plan. And certainly for those businesses I've been working with recently, the feedback I'm getting from this on how helpful it is has been tremendous. So if you haven't done your business recovery plan, now's the time to do it, as it will form a great foundation from which to build your cash flow improvement strategy. And it would also potentially help with loan applications. So there are a couple of options that are available to you in terms of completing this plan. So the first one is to meet with us online so we can do this together, either as a single session of up to 4 hours or two 2-hour sessions. Before the session, we'll send you in-depth pre-work to complete so you have time to consider the impact that COVID-19 has had on each department of your business. And we'll then use your completed pre-work to guide us together through the plan and set goals for each department. And this will ensure you have a detailed and well thought out plan to give your business the best chance of recovery. The second option is a business recovery review. Now, in this option, we'll send you a business recovery action list to complete, which is a condensed version of the plan and is really looking at what are the actions that you've identified each department in your business needs to take in order to get the business back on track. Once you've completed the action plan, we'll then schedule a 15 to 20-minute call to review your plan and your next steps. Now, the risk with this approach is that with everything else going on right now, you may not actually get around to doing the work. Now, if you're going to need to obtain business funding, it's absolutely vital that you prepare a cash flow forecast. Any loans that you take on will need to be repaid, so please don't fall into the trap of thinking that loans can be used to suddenly pay your mortgage for the next 6 months. The business has got to be able to generate the cash to repay those loans. Now, we know it may be difficult to commit to spending money right now, and that's why we've discounted our normal fees for work of this type by 50%. And we also have different payment options available, so please don't let cost be a barrier. Get in touch and we can work together to come to an arrangement that you can manage. I know that the benefits you'll get from these services will be far greater than the fee, but most importantly, it's about helping you as quickly as possible and ensuring that we're working with you to build a stronger, more resilient businesses. So these are the services that might help you right now, but we're also here for the long run. So if you're unsure on the best way forward, or you want to talk to us about how we might help you rebuild your business, then I'd recommend a complimentary meeting to discuss your goals, your current problems, and your challenges. We can then agree between us the best way that we can support you. And this might include things like a monthly or quarterly coaching program where we'll challenge your thinking, we'll hold you accountable for the things you say you're going to do, and we'll keep you motivated as you go along this new journey. Or you might want to consider joining one of our sales mastermind groups where a group of like-minded business owners meet on a regular basis. They learn new skills in some cases, or they'll polish up old skills that they've perhaps forgotten. They'll share their challenges, they'll share their ideas in a safe forum and challenge and support each other. So if any of these strike a chord with you, then please get in touch. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this brief presentation. I do appreciate that your time is really valuable right now. So I hope I've given you plenty of ideas to think about and some clear options for how we might be able to support you. But before I go, I just thought I'd share this quote with you. So things may never go back to normal. You might need to create a new normal, and that's okay. So make a simple plan today. Commit to at least 3 actions that you're going to take as a result of listening to this presentation. Write them down, give each of them an owner and a completion date. This is a really worrying time for many businesses, but you don't need to worry alone. There is a huge amount of support out there and more to come, and we're here to support you if you'd like our help. Thank you very much for your time. I'd love to talk if you'd like more help.